Hello, and welcome back to Let's Program with Cientier. I'm Cientier, because that's what I call myself. And today we're going to continue working on the task tracker program that I began last time that I'm really excited to make, and which is going to need another new class. So we're going to just start right off the bat with a new class. Let's see, what do I want to call this? I'm going to call this task module. So this is going to be an abstract class, task module. And tasks are going to be able to have a list of modules. So let's go ahead and add that. Actually, let's. How do I want to do this? Creates a new task and adds it to the list of all tasks. Let's see, I might want to add other stuff to the constructor, so I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new list. So I'm seeing a couple of things. Specifically, there's a number of different things I'm going to want to be able to do. So for example, I'm going to want to be able to save stuff to a file location, probably with auto-saving, and I'm going to want to have that be in the settings as well. But what I'm going to want to do right here is have a list of task modules. Task modules equals a new list of task modules, and then the stuff is by default private, by the way, but I'm going to be explicit about it. There's no reason not to be explicit, except it takes more keystrokes. Return task modules, bada boom, bada bing. The list of modules for this task. Okay, so there's a number of modules that I'm going to want to have. So when we look at this, there's a number of things that you'll see. Like, I want the ability to add links to open programs or web pages or to other tasks in the program. So that's going to be like some sort of linking module. Let's see, searching for specific tasks with refindable search results. That's something that I'm going to want to make sure I add, which is something that this all tasks will help with. Let's see, have a display of tasks organized by due date. So that's something we need to worry about in the main window. Something that lets me pop up a random task suggestion. The idea is to help me. Okay, so this, for example, could be a I want something to do. What's an incomplete task that I can do? So this would be something that I'd add as functionality to the main window as well. Ability to configure notifications for tasks and subtasks. So this will probably be related to an optional due date. So let's go ahead and add some stuff to modules. So there's a couple of things that I know right off the bat that I'm going to want to have for task modules. The first one is a what do I want to call this? Task module. I'm just going to call it ID. So this is going to be an idea of what the task module is. So I'm going to want a public ID ID get. Okay, so this is giving me a problem because it doesn't like that because ID is already. So I'm going to actually rename this to something other than ID because I want to use ID here. Type, maybe? Type is one of those things that can get a little overloaded, but we'll go ahead and go with... actually, let's be really explicit with this, and let's just call it module type. You'll see that type turned the sort of cyanish color that the class is because type is something that's already kind of gotten used. So this is something, this should be virtual, where you're going to need to specify it. Actually, is this something that just straight up becomes abstract or abstract? It's been a little while since I've worked with the abstract classes, so I have to remember the syntax, but thankfully IntelliSense is there to remind me how they work. So I'm also going to need a protected abstract void write. Here's where I want to go up here and tell it that I'm using system.io. I'm going to use, so this would actually be a really good case for using XML, but I don't feel like cutting my teeth on XML on this because I want to try to get this program up and operational as quickly as possible. I might in the future make a specific program for like Santier learns how to work with XML from C#, which is probably something that I should really do because there's a lot of cases where it's very useful. There's a couple advantages to binary, and there's a bunch of disadvantages as well. One of the advantages is it tends to be a lot more compact data space-wise. Because I'm planning on having a bit of an archive, it kind of makes sense to make it a little bit less verbose. The downside is that it's not human-friendly. It's not in a human-readable format. Now, I might add some sort of like export to XML functionality later. So that might be something to consider, but I'm not going to make XML functionality right off the bat. And the big reason for that is I don't know enough about working with XML right now to really do that. And I would want to do a dedicated project focused on how to XML before I were to actually try to use it in something major like this. So binary, like I said, has the advantage of being small, and it's significantly easier, at least right now, for me to just kind of set up. But like I said, there's definitely advantages to working with XML, and it would probably be. So what I would probably strongly consider doing is I would probably set up this to archive in binary and save the primary file without archived information in XML. So that way you can sort of work with it that way. But I'm not really sure. I'm just going to work with binary because it's what I'm familiar with. It's what I know best, and I want to get this up and working as quickly as possible. Learning a new technology takes time. But it definitely would behoove me to spend some time learning XML stuff, but that's probably going to be something I'm going to do off screen, as it were. So binary writer output, and for some reason it decided to give me that. Protected abstract void read binary reader input. Now, for those of you who watched, was it the previous one? Yeah, the previous one fairly early on. I did a similar scheme to what I'm going to be doing here. So I'm going to right here make a public generic write and a public. So the way that this one's going to actually work is this one's going to return a task module. So this is going to be a static. And the reason for this is because I don't know what type this needs to be when I'm trying to read it. So I'm going to funnel the read through task module.read. And so this is going to need to make use of a function that I haven't written yet. But it's going to be a task module tm for task module equals blah, blah, blah. tm.read input, return tm. So now all I have to do is replace the ... What I'm going to actually do is come right up here and go static public task module generate module type. So this is really important. I'm setting this up. I mean, it doesn't have anything to generate right now, but the way that this is going to work is, let's see, task. So this is going to just call generate. And this right here is going to be a cast of input.read int 32. So I'm going to just generate this from the module type, and then I'm going to read it. Creates a new. So this is actually something where I can potentially piggyback some functionality, by the way. If I want to implement copying and pasting tasks, I probably won't, but if I wanted to, I could make a binary reader that instead of being set on a file stream is set on a memory stream, and then I can use this for copy and paste, where I use write to write the task to the memory stream and then read it. So that's something that you could potentially do if you're wanting to implement copy and paste functionality. Like I said, I don't really currently see a reason why I'd want to do that. But if it's something that I decide I do want to add in the future, I can piggyback off of this particular piece of functionality to be able to handle that. So it creates a task module by reading it from a stream. The stream to read from, I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but whatever, the read task module. Okay. So write, on the other hand, needs to spell output correctly. ID. It's going to output whatever the ID is of this, and then it's going to write this. Writes this task module to the specified binary writer. The binary writer to write to. Hooray! It does what it says on the tin. Gets the ID type of this task module. So these right here, these are protected, used in reading and writing. So this is, let's see. I'm just going to region this. Again, regions are awesome because they let you kind of set up stuff with your code. I'm going to make a little bit of extra space on the end, so if I need to look in here, I can do so. But once this, this needs to be end region. But this allows me to just collapse that so I don't have to look at it all the time. So because I'm not going to be using this a lot of the time, it makes sense to kind of hide that because I am going to need to use this. So this is going to have a switch on the type. Default is going to be return null because there is nothing. But once I start making module types, task modules, I will add the type name here, and I will add it to this function. So let's go ahead and say identification for different types of task modules. So this is going to be useful for a couple of reasons, one of which is that the enums.toString will give you the name that you put in here, which is really, really handy, particularly when you are trying to like iterate through, for example. Something else that you can do is I'm just going to add a size here. Now, size I'm not going to add to this list because, and right now size has a value of 0, because this will automatically start with a value of 0 and then count up by 1. So when I add something in front of this, size will be 1. When I add another thing, it'll be 2. So this will allow me to use iteration with this particular value, and that will more easily facilitate certain pieces of functionality. Something that I might add is I might go here and go public, static public int type count get return int module type dot size. And the reason why I would do this is that way I can go task module dot type count rather than task module dot module type dot size, and it will allow me to be able to get this as an integer, which is much more useful for iterating than enum tends to be, just because you have casting issues that you have to deal with otherwise. But one of the things that's really useful, because this is going to pop up a or .toString would, for example, if I did .toString and something was type size, which doesn't make any sense, but it would give me size as it's written here. So that's really useful for some stuff that I'm going to do later. So this, let's see, generate a task module of the specified type. If the type is unknown, you'll get null. The type of task module to generate. And this is going to be a water break, so it makes it very hard to type because I'm holding my water cup, which is a cup full of water, not a cup made of water. That would be interesting. I guess you could make it out of ice, right? You could just freeze something in the shape of a cup. It probably wouldn't work very well, though, because the water would probably start freezing inside of it or melt it. These are the tangents you can expect when Santier starts rambling about language. The generated task module. I know generated is spelt wrong. Okay. All right, so here's kind of our base task module. So I'm going to make class TM. I'm going to just prefix these with TM for task module. So that way I can just kind of like identify them quickly and easily. And I'm just going to call this one due date. So, and this is going to inherit from task module. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add due date, because that's our first type. Case module type dot due date. So I'm specifically using underscore instead of something called camel case. Camel case would be if I wrote it as due date, like what I just did right up there. That'd be camel case because it's like a camel's hump. I think specifically camel case probably looks more like that. It doesn't matter. My basic point is I'm using the underscore, so that way I can use this .toString and then strip out the underscore for a space later, so that way I can make it look nicer. And again, I'm going to use this to automatically generate category stuff for when I want to add categories to a task. So when I have one of these, I want to return a new TM due date. Okay. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this, is whenever I make a new one of these guys, I'm going to give it a type, and now size says 1, as I said it would, and I'm going to make it in this generate function. Now remember, this will allow the reading behavior to be able to read it, and this will also allow me to make new ones with this generate function, which is something I'm going to need to do. Okay. Now then, let's see. TM due date. So this is going to need... So first of all, this is incomplete because it doesn't implement... why is it not getting me? Yeah, so it says it doesn't implement the different abstract stuff. So it's Alt-Shift F10? Nope, that is not the thing. There used to be a way... okay, apparently it just isn't happy with me if I try to do that. Okay, so this wants me to override ID. So this is going to return this. Fairly straightforward. Now, unfortunately, the default formatting for this is super spacious. It does not need to be. It can all be on one line. But unfortunately, it does not like to do that by default. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Gets the ID. You know, I'm not going to add that every time because A, I think it's pretty clear. B, I have it up here. That's what it does. And I don't want to add the additional, like, 3 lines that makes, because it does make it a lot more bulky. And it should be fairly clear what these are supposed to do. So I might want to override toString for this as well. toString is the default function, and I'm actually going to add a region for overrides. So toString is the function that's used to output what this is. So right now, if I call toString on it, it would tell me that's a TM due date, which is not especially useful. What would instead be more useful is if it outputted what the due date is. Now, of course, this currently doesn't have support for a due date. So that's obviously something that I'm going to need to fix. But, you know, there's a couple of things that I'm going to want to do to this. One of them is I'm going to want to add a list of active due dates. So this is going to be fairly similar to the all tasks thing. It's just I need to regularly, I don't know, like once every minute on the minute sort of thing, check all of the due dates that are currently active to see if, you know, they should pop up a notification or not. So I'm going to worry about filling this stuff in after I've gotten my information about what's in this class. So I'm going to go ahead and just go underneath my overrides. And I'm going to go ahead and put some stuff in. So I want a date time. For due date. I'm just going to make this public. Actually, I'm going to date time dot now. Like, obviously, you probably don't want stuff due right now, but we'll implement stuff for editing it later. And then I want public bool completed. Yeah. So the reason why I want it completed here is just that way I have a quick way of checking if it's done or not. That's really all. So when I toString this, I want to return due date plus due date dot toString. I don't know what its overloads are. Okay, it's just formatting stuff. So I'm just going to work with this right now. I don't know what it looks like. But I'm going to add a... So I'm going to add string completion completion writer. That's camel case equals that. If completed completion writer equals completed plus completion writer. So what's going to happen right now is it's going to either add absolutely nothing to the end of it if it hasn't been completed, or if it has been completed, it'll add completed afterwards. When I write it out, I want to output dot write due date dot let's see, to binary serializes. Okay, so I want to do that. So that will allow me to save it. And then I also want to do output.write completed. Now, one thing that's really important to note is stuff can be past the due date and it hasn't been completed yet. Now, technically, I'm also going to have completed in the tasks. The reason why I want to have a completed in here is kind of so that way I can set that fact in the due date. So that way when I'm loading it, for example, I know not to add it to the tasks. It might be something that's more privately maintained, but I might need to add a thing to this, an abstract to this for specifically on completion behaviors, if that makes if that makes sense. Actually, I am going to want to add that. So I'm just going to go ahead and go abstract public void on completion. So this right here is going to need to add override on completion completed equals test C. I don't know what this test C is, but it keeps like can pop up apparently. And then output dot write what? No. Input no. Okay, I see. Due date equals date time dot from binary input dot read int 64 because that is a long and a long is an int 64 because that's how they defined it. As opposed to the confusing mess that is C++, don't get me started. Integer types are confusing as snot there due to all sorts of changes. And then completed equals input.read boolean. Booleans are weird to save. I don't know if it saves it in a byte or if it saves it in an actual... Okay, yeah, it saves it in a byte. So it wastes a little bit of extra space because technically this could be stored in a bit, but just saving 1 bit is just not a thing. So it's technically inefficient to save like this by itself, but if I had other data that I was saving with it, I could kind of compact it. But I'm not worried too much about a single byte, and I'm not expecting to have so many of these that's going to be a problem, but it's just something to be aware of. So, for example, if you had a bunch of different booleans, you'd actually want to potentially combine them together into like a single byte. Or like a short or an int or something where you could use bit flags to check stuff, just for compression's sake. Okay, so I'm going to want to make a static list em due date. Let's see. All due dates equals new. Let's just go ahead and do the same thing that I have been doing and go static public because this one is private. Just to be explicit about that. List tm due date, all due dates. Now, due dates are something that I'm going to want to potentially be able to use in multiple ways. So there might be some, for example, that don't get completed. So I'm going to want to think a little bit about how I'm going to want to set this up. For example, I might want to set this up to have like a snooze functionality, as it were. An excellent example is if I want to set up, say, go to bed, Santier, at this time, like start getting ready for bed, I would want to set that up to have a snooze of 24 hours, where if I click it, it's like, okay, yeah, I know that's a thing. Hit this, it goes away for 24 hours and comes back again because I've set it up to do that. So that might be a functionality that I want to have. I might, like, basically, I would want to set up, like, a recurrent thing. So I might want to add that as well. But when this is completed, what I would want to do is go all due dates dot remove this. And this isn't the most efficient function, but it's probably not going to happen that often that you really care. One of the things that you'll find is that there's stuff that's like super inefficient, but if you're doing it really infrequently, you just don't care. Or if you're not doing enough volume, it just doesn't matter. This is going to have to like search through the entire list, probably its end time, and it's just going to go, this is it? And then it has to remove it, and it has to move everything afterwards, and it's just kind of a pain in the rear end. I'm glad I'm not implementing it, but and it's a little bit inefficient, but this is just like in game design, you worry, because I've done game programming, you worry about the efficiency of everything to like the nth degree because, or not everything, but most things, because they're happening every frame. And at 60 frames per second, that means you have around, what is it, like 17 milliseconds, a little bit under, think it's 16 and 2/3 milliseconds, I think, is what you get per frame at 60 frames per second. I could be a little off on that. Just take 1,000 divided by 60. But that is not very much time. So you're super paranoid about how long any particular thing is going to take. When you're working on an application like this, you just don't care as much. But because I have my education in game programming, I have sort of that training to like worry about size and worry about time taken on stuff, even if it doesn't matter as much, if that makes sense. This is not going to take long at all. It's just going to take long relative to like a frame, potentially. Like, it could take up too much of a frame if I was running at 60 frames per second, and I don't even care about that, so it's not something to worry about. But it's something that, because of my training, my brain worries about anyway. Okay. So, now that I've kind of, let's go ahead and list of all due dates. Okay. So, I'm going to want to add a couple of important functions. So I'm going to want to add check due date. I'm going to pass this date time when. Now, technically, I'm going to call these functions with probably date time now, but and probably it should just be date time now that I check in here. Again, this is my like brain thinking, oh, what if there's slight variations? Just, no, it's not a problem. Just call date time now. So let's see. If due date is less than date time dot now. Let's see. What's this comparison? It's earlier than another specified date time. Hooray! That's what I want it to be. So if due date is earlier than date time now, then do thing. I'm going to need to figure out how I'm going to set this up to do thing. So this is one of those questions that you have to kind of ask yourself, how do you want to handle? And so that's probably a question for next time. Because as I look over, I see the handy-dandy little clock is counting up past half an hour. So because the ending of the last Let's Program series, really long episodes, I kind of want to try to make sure I'm starting this one off without that trend. So that's going to wrap us up here for today. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.